Welcome to the Profitable Hospitality Podcast with your host, Ken Bergen. Making business management easier, less stressful, and much more profitable.
Welcome to Profitable Hospitality Podcast 279. I'm Ken Bergen, and today I'm talking with Christine Green about how to get the best results from your restaurant bookkeeping system. Many hospitality operators are not by nature numbers people, and it's easy for this important area of management to be neglected. You find the show notes and links for today's interview on your podcast app and at profitablehospitality.com.au. Don't forget to connect with Profitable Hospitality on Facebook and with me, Ken Bergen, on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Hello, it's Ken Bergen here from Profitable Hospitality. Today I'm talking to Christine Green. She's the founder of Restaurant Bookkeepers Australia. She's been in the hospitality industry in a variety of ways for quite a while and knows the industry inside out. We're talking about getting better results from your restaurant bookkeeping. Christine, great to have you here today.
Good afternoon, Ken. Thanks for having me.
So I thought we all know the importance of bookkeeping, and I think a lot of people are moving to cloud-based systems, or they're certainly realising the old ways of sending things off to your bookkeeper every 3 months or 6 months just doesn't work at all. So I wanted to dive into some of the results that you're seeing, because you're now working with a lot of businesses in the industry through you and your network, and without breaking confidentiality, you must be seeing patterns, and you must be seeing lots of people doing good things and sort of consistent kind of shortcomings and things too, and that's the stuff that I'm really interested to find out about. So just tell us about the network of bookkeepers and professional people that you work with your business.
So the people that work in my business have qualifications in accounting and bookkeeping, and the whole business and myself are registered with the Tax Practitioners Board. So we follow a code of conduct and due diligence that comes with that registration. Properly insured, the whole shooting match. So I've got this business geared from a trust and reliability perspective, because I feel like that's going to help make a difference to the food industry.
Sure. So typical clients who come to you, why would they move from the the accountant they've been using before, or the bookkeeper?
Well, that's an almost unfair question, because I don't really want to make other people's services sound bad. But I guess if you're looking at a point of difference is the fact that my business has evolved into taking advantage of the latest technology in cloud-based systems, and also in the way that those cloud-based systems are working with artificial intelligence and optical code character recognition, the way they read documentation, and just to bring that speed and accuracy to getting the fastest financial information on a daily basis.
Okay. So thinking about some recent clients you've been working with, maybe for a while or maybe they're new ones, what are some of the sort of surprises that you've come across, or what are the typical things that people are doing wrong, getting into a bit of detail?
Oh, wow. I guess I'm getting to a stage where nothing surprises me anymore with the food industry, because it's such a broad character and colourful bunch of people, I guess, is
That's polite of you, isn't it?
You could see I was struggling with finding the words for that. I didn't want to just jump right in there. Some of the things that I've seen in bookkeeping and accounting processes that have really messed up some businesses and how they put together is one client said, that was actually based in New South Wales, said the cash in the till doesn't have to count if I don't put it in the bank. So they thought that it was okay to keep cash that they put into the till on a daily basis through sales. If they kept it in the safe on the premises, they didn't have to declare it. Mm-hmm. But they also didn't realise that if their sales weren't going up at a later date, it was going to be very difficult to sell their business. They also had the tax compliance that came around that. There were so many compliance issues, but we'll move on to the next one.
So their innocence, is that just from being completely new to business and naive? They weren't being cunning in that case.
Well, I think this one is a bit of both. it was a relatively new business, and their comment to me was that their accountant told them that was okay. And I can tell you now, under Australian registration, that no accountant would say that and risk their registration. So I'm assuming the accountant had a conversation with them, but they've misinterpreted the information. And that's probably the crux of a lot of problems with businesses setting off on the wrong foot, is simply just lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't think most people don't set out to have a lack of integrity in their food business. They don't intend to pay people incorrectly. They don't intend to not declare full information to the tax. I think it just in those first 6 months, reality sets in, cash flow becomes an issue, and then they just have to cut corners to try and survive. And before they know it, they've slipped into some underhanded or incorrect processes to stay afloat. So another one that we have that people make a common mistake is running their personal expenses through their business accounts. So there's another client in Victoria that was paying their home loan out of their business check account from the cafe and coding it to loan repayments on the business, but the business didn't have that loan. And now that business is trying to sell. So there's been it's taken quite a few months to go through the last 3 years of accounting work and actually do a rescue job and clean all that back information up. So there was everything from...
Did that mean they're going to have to pay more tax because of the cleanup?
Yeah, like there was some wins in one sense, and there was some losses in the other. So they had some sales there that they had done some catering work and created invoices to the customer, but somewhere along the lines they'd created 3 invoices for the same thing to the customer. So it had actually been that they had inflated sales in their income statement, but that customer didn't owe them money. So they couldn't plan their cash flow because they knew in the back of their mind that, no, that customer's already paid, but it looked like they'd sold more. So when we took that out, it meant they paid less GST. But they had the same problem in the purchases and side of things as well. So they didn't know where they were. It was a long job, and to get to the bottom of things that had happened 12 months ago, they don't remember. Because there's
that's a good point. Yes, we think we're going to remember, and we just can't.
Just can't. I mean, we're basically humans. We aren't computers. So documentation is everything. Another one that actually made me laugh is seeing the visa receipts go through from a gentleman's strip club. That's always fun.
Oh, okay.
I just can't find a category that's a tax compliant category for that one.
I think a few politicians have been caught out with that one too.
Well, everybody has a go, I guess. Something that people forget too is bank merchant fees. So when you're paying merchant fees to your banks for credit card transactions, you can actually get a GST credit on that. Normally bank fees are GST free, but merchant credit card ones does attract the GST credit, and that's the goods and services tax.
So that would be they'd just been everything that was a bank fee was being coded in the same way instead of there's actually 2 different codes there. Interesting, yeah. So you brought up that issue about when it's time to sell too, when we want our place to look profitable and fantastic and easy to run, and that's when suddenly our books are looking a bit skimpy or a bit kind of suspect. To talk me through a bit more about how to have a great set of books when you want to put your business on the market.
Okay, well, there's a number of factors that can actually come together to make those books look good. So another mistake I just got a message actually from one of my customers today here in Brisbane and said that, woohoo, he sold and settlement is next week. So we've been working for the last couple of months. Yeah, I feel like we've contributed to that because we've just done a 12-month rescue job and cleaned up his books as part of that sale process. And he had a lot of issues that some of them that I just mentioned before, not the Gentleman's Club. He's a good boy. But things like Silver Chef leased products, Silver Chef rental products he had in his business, he had coded them himself to a liability account which showed as if it was a loan. In actual fact, they're off balance sheet. They're a rental expense. So we were able to claw back the GST claim for him on that, as well as put it back into its proper category so that he had a more true set of books. So if a buyer comes to look at your books and they smell bad, and you've got stuff coded incorrectly, and the buyer's accountant goes, "This is a mess," the buyer's going to lose confidence, and all that does is drive down the price. So if they look at your books and they seem really well organised and they're clean and things are coded where they need to be, the accountant gets a little bit more confident and says, okay, well, if you're saying that you're running at this much profit and this is your wages, it must be true. So the buyer is going to be more inclined, you would hope, to consider your buying price.
You brought up a good point there, because, behind every enthusiastic, mad, keen purchaser, there's actually a kind of team of worried people, family members, accountants, brothers and brother-in-laws, and all these people who say, no, don't do it. Yeah, and we've got to reassure a lot of people.
Another one is the leasing. So have a good lease in place and see that that's also reflected in your books. There's things like the loans that you have over equipment. You need to know if the new buyer will get clear title over that.
You're talking about leasing of equipment now, not the landlord relationship, yeah.
No, a lease as in a rental agreement.
Yes,
for the landlord. Sorry, yeah. I've confused you there. So, yeah, the rental agreement is in place for the premises.
Okay,
and that needs to be coded correctly in your balance sheet, showing if you've prepaid, if you've got a bond that is refundable, does that come in as part of the sale? You could have paid 6 months rent in advance, and that needs to be identified as who gets that at the point of sale.
Any other things with landlords that we should be conscious of at that stage, or things to take advantage of?
Well, when you're starting out, if the new buyer is going to renegotiate a lease, they could consider some improvements to the fit out or some upgrades to a grease trap or something like that could be incorporated into a new lease. If they're going to be released, if the seller is going to be released from the original lease. So that's actually a complex area that I think any lease can be negotiated however you want, but the more you ask from your landlord, consider that the higher your rent may be, because he'll have to get that money back.
Yeah, you want to be as low maintenance as possible, really, don't you?
But at the same time, if your landlord's got some skin in the game, you've got some skin in the game, mutually you both want to see the business succeed. So that can be an advantage. Something that's talked about but not necessarily rated as valuable is digital currency, your online footprint. So if you've got really good social media engagement, you've got a cracking website, you can show that you get traffic that drives there and drives to the website, and you get bums on seats through the booking on your website. That's part of your digital currency. If you've got 5,000 followers on Instagram, you get really good engagement on Facebook. These sort of things can make a world of difference to your buyer, because the first thing they're going to do is research you online. Then they'll come into your shop, then they'll see if you keep it clean, if everything's in good order. They'll have a look at the staff and see if there's any value there. But if there's a way that you can rate your IP and your digital currency, you might be able to get your accountant to put that on your balance sheet and add a dollar value to it.
Okay, that's interesting, because a few years back I remember talking to a lawyer, and this is where things are changing so much, and he poo-pooed the idea of, how many people on your email list or your Facebook fans and all those sorts of things. But I think what you're saying is, it's part of the research that people are doing and the enthusiasm they're going to feel when they see a very active, say, Facebook page and lots of comments and likes and interaction. It is a pretty interesting lens on, how many people are coming in the door, isn't it?
A strategic buyer is going to be more interested in how they feel or what opportunity that cafe or restaurant offers to them as part of their bigger plan. Sometimes more so than what the numbers are actually reflecting. So a cafe can be running at a loss but still sell quite well because it forms part of a bigger plan for the buyer, and that's a strategic buyer.
Okay, to just talk a bit more about that, because I've always assumed everything can be sold at a price, but a place that's not making any money you would think is going to be very hard to sell. Where have you seen these strategic buys?
I won't mention names of brands, but there is a brand in Queensland that's been doing a rapid rollout and expansion by setting up new premises, but also at the same time buying existing and reskinning them to suit the logistics of the growth of their overall brand throughout the state. And that's worked very well for them. Now, their buying price, I don't know the full details of their buying price, but I'm pretty sure that they've had leverage to their advantage because the existing cafe may be failing or not showing at a profit. But for them to go in and buy it cheaply, it releases a very distressed business owner so they can move on with their life, but they're able to, at a very low cost, reskin the business, rebrand it, and then put it back out there, operate, and then that forms part of the major part of the brand.
Interesting. What other kind of clumsy things do you see people doing with their bookkeeping that are kind of quick wins or quick improvements that they could make?
The hot topic of employee contracts and wages. If you've got 10 staff buzzing around and a buyer walks in and they have a look at your books and they say that the wages are only really reflective of the value of 5 employees, that's not going to look good. So paying staff cash under the table or however you want to do it so that it's secretive and you think you've got a win-win by not showing that employee on your books, it's just not going to reflect true when you come to sell.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think having talked to a lot of people who are about to buy and then beforehand, no one plans to go down the illegal route, but when the pressure's on and they're not making money, it seems like the staff are the ones where they take the shortcuts sooner or later.
If you can show that you've also got systems and processes that just flow really easily, that make that whole document management side of your business appear to be simple and without hiccups, that has to be appealing for a buyer as well. If they walk into your kitchen and they can see a box in the corner and there's receipts and documents hanging out everywhere and the staff don't have any sign-off or sign-off-on procedures, they don't, again, it just brings doubt into the value of your business and if any of the information is actually truthful.
So let's change gears and talk about the new operator who's coming into a business. Let's say they got a bit of experience before, so they know the importance of setting things up properly. How do you walk them through, get this in place and this in place and use this system? What's your kind of toolkit that you'd want to set them up with?
Okay, going right back from scratch, they would register their Australian business number, their business name. They'd register for GST so that they can start claiming those expenses from day one. Because if they're not registered properly, but they start setting up their business, those expenses for the setup, you don't actually get a tax refund
until you've
back.
Registered.
Yeah, from the GST.
Okay.
All right, and on top of that, I would say put every single little receipt and expense in a shoebox until you do get organised. So long as you've got the registration in place, the accounting software, all that sort of thing can come later. Just keep every receipt because you're going to need to make every financial post a winning post.
Yeah.
You're going to need to claim back as much as you can. And if there's about $5,000 worth of missing setup receipts, that's just a loss that you could have taken advantage of. So throw them all in a box, figure out how to tidy them up later. But if you're smart, then the accounting software gets set up. I would strongly recommend that you only go down the track of cloud accounting now. Any cloud software, there's Xero, there's QuickBooks, there's MyOb, there's Reckon, there's so many different choices. For the hospitality industry, Xero seems to be swinging as the absolute leader at the moment. That's for most cafes and restaurants. Once that has been set up, you'd want to know that your chart of accounts is how you want it to tell the story back to you. You want to know whether you're going to break it up into different locations or different sections within your organisation. Will it feed in properly to your POS system? So choose the POS system wisely and know that it will talk to the accounting software that you choose.
Are you finding most people are doing that integration between their POS and this bookkeeping? Okay.
Yep, it's more and more common. Open 2 bank accounts. Okay, I've always called it teapot accounting for a long, long time. So have one account for your regular day-to-day trading, your check account, and not that anyone writes checks anymore, but your check trading account, and the other account is just a general savings account that could be interest-bearing. And make a religious habit that you set up an automatic transaction on your bank that every week so many hundreds or thousands of dollars sweeps from your check account to your savings account in anticipation for paying your first BAS. So for Australia, that's a business activity statement, and that consists of paying your employees' PAYG tax, and you've also got to pay your super and your GST rather. But then also, in addition to a BAS, you have to pay your superannuation every quarter, and that. When businesses first start, they forget in the first 3 months they're going to be hit with that bill, and they don't put the money aside. And there begins the cash flow grind and making deals with the ATO or the Australian Taxation Office to be able to pay off the debt.
So you're telling people that even if you've never been a good saver in your whole life, now you actually have to be
from day one,
organised.
The day you start, you open that first business check account. Most banks will offer that now. They'll actually call it a BAS account or a GST account, and that is purely for every week you sweep money aside into it. And then when the first BAS report is due and the tax says you've got to pay us XYZ dollars, you can sleep easy because you just go, it's paid. You might be struggling with paying your suppliers and they're blowing out from 7 days to 30 days. That's fine, but if you don't keep the tax happy, the banks won't like you. So in Australia, if you go to the bank and ask for some funds for some expansion or just buy some new equipment, first thing they'll look at is your tax portal. They'll want to know the integrated client account. Are you sitting at zero, or do you owe the taxman a debt and you're paying it off?
Okay, so this is making the bank's job much more easy and accurate in a way, I suppose. Is that meaning they're saying no more often or yes more often? Or
they'll say yes more often if they can see that you're up to date with your tax compliance. So going back years and years and years ago, the common thing in business was to use the tax debt as a cheap way to have a loan. I'm not going to pay my $20,000 tax bill this quarter. I might just pay that off over the next 2 years. And it was either low or no interest. But where that backfires now is banks. That's the first thing they're looking at. So if you think that you'll have a need to talk to your bank further down the track, you need to keep your tax obligations clean.
So we've got our bookkeeping set up. We've got a point of sale system that integrates with that. Now there's other
two bank accounts.
Two bank accounts, yep. Okay.
Yep.
And they'll be both
simple chart of accounts. Don't make it too complex.
And how do I find the right chart of accounts for a hospitality
some
business?
of the software actually have existing templates, or again we can set you up on a simple chart of accounts that gets you started. And your chart of accounts can grow and be modified as time goes. So in simple speak, a chart of accounts is simply a line of things, a line or a total of things, different things and categories that are happening in your business so you can make business decisions.
So here's one for chart of accounts. I always ask people, where do you put flowers?
Or
as an expense, the bunch of flowers I buy each week.
Flowers.
Yeah, to go on the front counter.
Okay, so if you're buying in those flowers to on-sell them, they'll have a line.
No, this is as decoration.
As decoration? Well, you can run that as an expense that's operational to your business. So for me, that would be like fixtures, furnishings, or it could be like a consumables, like an office expense kind of thing.
Okay, because we don't want it to be dumped into the food purchases, because it may be delivered by the same people, because that's going to push your food costs up just a little bit.
And that will be itemised on any bill that your supplier gives you anyway. So that's easy to just put in a different place. Yeah. You don't lump everything together, because that means if you're buying in $100 worth of food and you're selling it for $120, part of that's actually flowers. So it's going to make
your expenses too high.
It's gonna make an unrealistic view on how much food you're actually selling and how much you're making on the food that you prepare on it.
Okay, so now there's a whole range of other online services that people are increasingly using, like online rostering, booking systems. What do you find your smarter clients are using, and how are they integrating all this together, hooking it all together?
Now, at the moment, I don't think I have anyone that stands out above the others. I think it comes down to the matching of the integration is more, and the setup is more important than anything. Like, there's plenty of them. There's Creative POS, Square, Counter, Albert, Abacus, Automate. There's the KeyPay payroll system that plugs into all of those. There's so many choices that the app development side of things is probably getting a bit out of control, but they're all getting more and more sophisticated. So before you decide on one, look at the setup costs. What hardware are they going to expect you to buy for this stuff to work? How much is the ongoing leasing of the software and the hardware? Every time there's a transaction, is there going to be a percentage fee deducted out of each sale of every coffee? Because this is going to impact your overall profitability and how you're going to be able to service that ongoing cost. So I know a cafe here in Brisbane, not a client, but I've had detailed discussions with him, and he's only a small cafe, not a large turnover, had been trading for a few years, but then decided that it would be really good to get some handheld iPads where the clients could sit at the table and order from the table and not have the human interaction. And he had to sign up for, I think it was a 2 or 3 year deal to pay this hardware off and the software that went with it. So I had to play with it, and it was actually quite exciting the way that it worked. But then the other 2 people that were with me, they just went, I couldn't be bothered learning this, put it down and said, I'm going to the counter to order. So then when I spoke to him a little while later, he said, I've gotten rid of it. I got my way out of the contract, got rid of the whole lot, and I've hired a couple of waitresses again, or waiters again.
Right, interesting, okay. So really there's all
know
these...
what you need it to do,
and
don't go over the top.
And a lot of this stuff comes as a monthly or weekly rental now rather than a purchase price, doesn't it?
Can do, yes.
Yeah. What about online rostering? I'm a big fan of it. How many of your clients are using that? How are they, making use of it?
Again, this comes down to the number of staff you have and how much you're prepared to pay for it to happen, to work, and will it plug into existing systems, because you don't want to make it too complex. But rostering is a nightmare for pretty much anybody, whether you've got 3 staff or 30. It's just the pits. It's probably harder than managing the payroll. But some of the software like KeyPay is actually really, really smart at all of that sort of stuff. There's, I think, what's the other one? Is Deputy. Deputy, I think,
Tander's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, Deputy, Tander. All of those come with really high user experiences that are good quality. Like they're leading the bar.
What other services then attached to our Xero, to our accounting software, Xero or MYOB, do you recommend? I mean, at the beginning you were talking about character recognition to read things like invoices. How are people using different add-on services for their bookkeeping?
Now, there's 2 that are absolutely spectacular that are a bookkeeper's and accountant's best-kept secret, and they're called HubDoc and Receipt Bank. So it's a document management process that plugs into software. It still requires interaction. It's not totally automated.
You mean I can't do nothing? It won't do it all?
Not quite. But HubDoc's really, really cool because in this point it's better than Receipt Bank because it will link into, you have to link it into some of your suppliers, and you no longer have to ring the client, or I as a bookkeeper don't have to ring the client and say, can I have your bank statement please? We need that to reconcile. HubDoc will go into the bank, pull down the latest bank statement and file it automatically, waiting for any attention or work that needs to be done on it. You can connect, there's some of the different suppliers everyone will know, Telstra, AGL Energy, so your electricity supply, your phone supply, there's a Mason, there's Optus. They all connect with HubDoc, and they'll pull down your next bill when it's ready, and have it ready to plug in with your accounting software. So it goes through a approval process. It scans the content of the document, and then it helps bookkeepers and accountants to be able to extract that and make sure it gets coded where it's got to go.
So these systems. We've got, good cloud-based systems. You've set it up properly for us. Now, what do I do as the operator? Say I do set a half a day a week aside to do this, and I don't hate it. I don't mind sitting down. But what's best that I do, and what do you do, and then what does the accountant do? What are our different roles?
Okay, so when you're set up efficiently, all you need to do is have your cloud software signed up and set up, and you need a scanner at the restaurant. Mm-hmm. So everything that you do that's financially related to the business, you drop into the scanner and it scans through to the next stage of the process. From there, we pick it up from there and we just put it all together. You can do that on your phone. So the technology now enables you to pick up your phone. Say you've had a box of chicken delivered, there's a delivery docket and there's an invoice from the supplier. You've signed on the front of it that everything's okay, no damaged box, it's still frozen or fresh, however you get it. I'm not going to start that controversy. Take a photo of the bill with your phone and click upload, and it goes straight into the portal, and it all happens from there. So that night when you're sitting having a glass of wine, one would hope, eating your dinner over watching the telly, you take the phone out, you open up your software program such as Xero, and straight away you can see that bill is sitting there waiting to be paid. And a copy of the bill is actually attached electronically to that transaction in your accounting software.
And that's read line by line, the entries there, hasn't it? Okay.
Yep.
And does it gradually learn, with how to categorise, like the flowers? It learns to categorise flowers here, not there.
There's rules. You can put rules in place to instruct the software to recognise that more immediately. And none of the software suppliers have got this perfect yet. So if there was a bill that went through and it had 30 lines on it, some had GST, some didn't. There was wet tax, which is wine equalisation tax. If that was there, none of the programs have that right yet. That needs human intervention. Mm-hmm.
Which actually I don't think would be a bad thing, because it means you actually are going to do a little bit of checking, because in my experience, the more people automate things, then they get hands off. Correct. And then they get a little bit kind of lazy, and then no one checks, and suddenly, whoops, something went through that I should have.
And one accident or one bad coding error then becomes 30 bad coding errors over a period of time.
That's right.
And it just becomes so much more to fix.
Yeah.
So it is important that baby steps and get it done properly in the first instance.
Right. So I've got the scanning is the kind of the physical process, and then I'm checking my Xero statement, Xero online. Yep. And now where do you or my bookkeeper come into this process?
That's what we do at the back end. So once you've scanned it up, we take care of the rest of it.
Okay.
We'll make sure that documentation is correctly coming in. Mm-hmm. We will then check your bank account to see what transactions have happened there and say, oh, there's $300 out of your bank account. We'll then start backtracking through the document process,
right.
And then we'll ask you, where is the document?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then if we see something that's irregular or doesn't match how you normally operate, we'll highlight that to your attention. So we can get your accounts payables ready, and we'll check it off with the supplier statements. So when their statements come in, you don't have to check that off. They might have on there that there's 10 bills need to be paid, but our records show that there's only 8. So we'll go back to your supplier and say, can you show us some evidence of why there's 2 extra bills there that need to be paid?
Okay, so that fiddly checking process actually could be taken out of my hands too, because people always think, only I'll know that, what a half full box of capsicums is when it should have been a full one, but they don't follow up. All that stuff, it just gets forgotten.
If you've got a Telstra bill that's normally, I'm just going to pull a figure out of my head at the moment, if you've got a Telstra bill that's normally $500, but it comes through all of a sudden at $700, that will ping as irregular to us, and we'll highlight that to your attention.
Okay.
But pretty much any document you scan to us physically that's come into the restaurant, you won't scan that up unless you've approved it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you don't want to put that into the process unless you're happy that it's legit.
So how's our accountant fit into the hierarchy now? What's their job? Are they got anything left to do? Or?
Look, the two lines are getting a bit blurred, and see, accountants don't normally do that day-to-day stuff. Mm-hmm. If you think of an accountant like your ear, nose and throat specialist, you need them occasionally. Okay. So once or twice a year you hook up with your
accountant. Do they like that description?
No, I hate it. You hook up with your accountant and you talk about overall tax strategies and, where you're financially headed. Your bookkeepers are like your GP, your general practitioner. They keep you healthy on a regular basis. Okay, so bookkeepers, they look after your housekeeping. They keep the house tidy. They have their finger on the pulse on a weekly or monthly basis. And BAS agents are best because they have a higher level of training and they are actually registered with the Tax Practitioners Board, and we have to comply with codes of conduct. So generic bookkeepers don't have that infrastructure that they have to comply with, whereas BAS agents actually do. So that's going to be your best advantage. And with the way that the industry is changing and the Australian tax laws are really cracking down on certain industries, such as the food industry, you want to know that there is some sort of safe harbour or shift of responsibility with the management of your bookkeeping side of the business. You want to know that your GST has been recorded correctly and that you are ticked as compliant. If a bookkeeper is managing your wages, you want to know that they are complying with whatever is required at the latest.
Right. So you can actually, if there is an underpayment or a mistake, you can actually more truthfully argue it's an innocent one rather than a kind of a sneaky one. Yeah.
At the end of the day, as a business owner and a director of a business, under Australian Securities and Investment Commission laws, you are responsible for what goes on in your business. So if you outsource or employ somebody, you need to know that they're going to give you the best, most honest quality service that is going to make you look good and be compliant.
Great. So I'm sure people are going to be newly inspired, I hope they are, about taking their bookkeeping and, record keeping more, make it more efficient and be more responsible with it. But just before people ring you or someone else to get started, what's just one quick tip, sort of low-hanging fruit that you'd recommend people could do in the next few days to take more control over bookkeeping and accounts?
Buy a scanner.
Okay. Good, I like it.
There's some great ones on the market. Don't get a flatbed scanner. It's which is like a printer with a glass top. Don't get one of them.
That's often your printer, isn't it? It's your printer's got a scanner.
Nuts. You can look up the brand ScanSnap, which is, I call them ScanSnap.
Fujitsu. I've got one. I love it.
And you just drop the documents in the top. They come all different shapes and sizes, but the higher model that you can afford, definitely go there. I've got one on my desk here. It's a IX500, and I can drop in A4 documents. I can drop in those fiddly little receipts you get from the petrol station, 5 at a time, and it just goes zip, 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 feeds through, and they're scanned perfectly.
And does double-sided too, which is
double-sided as well. Splits them, does all sorts of fancy tricks. And if you've got one of those in your kitchen, as stuff comes in the back door from for deliveries, whoever is, and you can leave this to your absolute lowest cost person in the business. You don't have to be a genius to do this. So you can get, quick, think of somebody cheap. The Apprentice might be the one. Apprentice, that's it. I couldn't actually put my finger on it. So if you can get your Apprentice, as he signs off on the food as it comes in the back door and he's checking the boxes, if you've got a process there where there's a red pen always on the bench and he writes, tick, 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 received by Joe Blogg's Apprentice, everything okay, and then he drops that straight into the scanner, that will scan up to the cloud, and that starts the process. If there's also a delivery docket but no bill, same thing applies, because that then becomes part of the matching and the approval that this box of goods is okay.
Nice.
And that the documentation, once it's scanned to the portal, to the correct location, the business owner, the bookkeeper, the accountant, anyone can look at that document and make sure that it goes where it's got to go and it's paid or not paid.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, just get it kind of out of the kitchen, get it into the cloud where it's going to be examined by the owner or by you or both or whatever. I like that a lot.
And for goodness sake, take your bookkeeping seriously. You can't make business decisions if you don't understand the numbers, and make sure your bookkeeper can actually tell you what the numbers mean. Or or they can just on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Even if you're a small cafe and you only want to hear that information every quarter, let the bookkeeper say to you, look, in 3 weeks' time, you're going to have to pay your BAS bill and it's going to be so many dollars. Please make sure you got the cash put aside. I noticed that you haven't been saving the money. You want to have those. You want to have a devil's advocate, someone whispering out.
Yeah, okay, a little bit in the parental role, sort of. Yeah, I like
it does.
that.
It keeps you on top of your game, and you can sleep a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. This is terrific, Chris. Now, how do people find you online? How do they make contact?
Oh, dead easy. If you can spell restaurant and then bookkeepers, you can find me. So Restaurant Bookkeepers Australia, our website's restaurantbookkeepers.com.au. You can get me through the contact page, or you can call on 13000 ideas, which is 1300 043 327.
Fantastic. And I like your blog. You're blogging pretty regularly with, latest news about all sorts of, crazy and annoying things the tax department's doing or whatever, but you're just sharing lots of information.
The biggest change that you'll find on those blog articles that's coming through is in Australia, it's called STP, Single Touch Payroll. Mm-hmm. So that means that all of these online accounting programs are now connecting directly to the tax office to report wages. So as you run a pay run every week or fortnight, straight away that goes to the tax office, and it tells the tax office how much tax you've taken out of an employee's pay and how much superannuation that you are meant to pay. Right. So if you don't pay on time, the tax office will now know. And if you've got over 20 employees, that's a head count. That's part-time, casual, full-time, whatever. You have to do that as of the 1st of July. Mm. If you've got under 20 employees, it's 1st of July next year. So you've got a 1 year breather to get that up and running. And so this is something that needs to be set up in your business and needs to be compliant, and it does have to be set up correctly, or it's going to ping the OTO and they're going to look a little bit more closely at you.
Stay below the radar. Great advice. Great talking to you. Really appreciate it, Chris. Thanks. Love your work.
Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us. I hope this interview will help you to take more control of this important area of restaurant management. You can find more information about all areas of hospitality management at profitablehospitality.com.au. Signing up is simple, and we have some great membership options. Hope to connect with you soon.